So hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and today I want to talk about nerfs. Not that there are necessarily any more nerfs happening. I think I covered all the nerfs that we know about so far in the video I released on Saturday. So I just want to talk about nerfs and game balance in general, because I find it very interesting. Now, this all started basically with a straw poll. I was curious to see how you guys perceive nerfs, so I did this straw poll. Here's a question: have you ever come back to a PvE focused game after the devs nerfed something, with the nerf being the primary reason why you returned? And over 2,000 people at this time have voted on this. And it is not what I expected at all. 32% of the people voted yes and 68% of the people voted no. I honestly expected far more people to vote no, but after going through the comments, I understand why some people voted yes, and I found it interesting. The most obvious thing when you read the comments on the straw poll is that everyone reacts to game balance differently, and it means different things to them. This is why it's so hard to balance a game to a point where most people are happy, because everyone sees it differently and everyone wants different things. One comment in particular stood out to me a lot, and it's something I see a lot as well, and it has nothing to do with Warframe. It's actually about Path of Exile. The comment says, Path of Exile is a good example. Devs constantly change things to keep it fresh. Which is true. Grinding Gear Games, the company behind Path of Exile, will constantly shake up the meta in between each league. And Chris Wilson, one of the founders behind Grinding Gear Games, even explained why. It's so that one thing isn't the best thing forever. This is aimed specifically at people that will only play the best thing regardless of what kind of playstyle it is. And for those people, it's great because it means they have a nice variety of playstyles over many leagues. But I, for example, have always disliked this idea because I have a clear preference when it comes to playstyle in Path of Exile. It's centered around minions. I love playing minion builds. So when they decided to buff the minions a few leagues ago, I was very happy, but now that they nerfed them to the ground and they keep nerfing them, not so much. So for me, this is clearly not an ideal system, but for someone that will play the best thing regardless of what kind of thing it is a pretty good system. And that's one of the reasons why it can be so hard to balance stuff. Now, the argument here could be that, well, you don't need to nerf things, you just need to buff the bad things to be as good as the other things. But I feel like that only works for a while when it comes to games like Warframe, where we get progressively stronger and stronger over time. Because if they release a new gun and it's not better in any way, shape or form than the previous guns, are people gonna use it? Probably not. This then becomes this rolling snowball of uncontrollable player power, because we get better and better stuff and suddenly everything else is not good enough, so let's buff it up, and then we get better and better stuff and everything else isn't good enough, so let's buff it up, and yada yada yada. And after a while you get to a point where nothing in the game is even remotely challenging, and people don't like it, so you need to nerf everything at once. And then you can do it in two ways. You can either just nerf everything, reduce the player power, or buff the enemy power, so the things you're fighting are stronger. And if you decide to buff the enemies, are you gonna do it across the board, or are you gonna introduce a new tier of enemy that's just stronger? And if you're gonna buff all the enemies, you have to make sure that you don't buff the starting enemies too much so that new players aren't screwed. And if you're gonna introduce a new tier of harder enemies, are you happy with the rest of the game just being super easy? I think the most important thing when it comes to nerfs and rebalancing is just context, right? If you just nerf something, it's like, why did you nerf it? But if you explain, well, we had to nerf this because of this and this and this, people might understand it more. It's why I think nerfs go down better and are more understood and more well received when they're part of a much larger, broader rebalancing of a game rather than just nerfs on their own. Because a lone nerf of something that people obviously like can sometimes feel like a knee-jerk reaction. Oh, this is too good, people are using it too much, let's just kill it. But if it's shrouded in other stuff, mostly buffs, it can go down much easier. Okay, we nerfed this gun because it was too good and everyone was using it, but we also buffed all of these guns that were not even considered by most people, so that they are on par with this nerfed thing now. So essentially buffing everything up at once, while also giving you less power than you had before, because even though they did buff all the worst things to be as good as the best thing isn't as good as it used to be. And I hope that made at least some sense. Now, one of the reasons why people voted yes that they did return after the devs nerfed something was pretty interesting. And it was essentially, I didn't like what the meta was at the time, and the thing I would rather be playing was much, much worse, to a point where it felt bad. So when they nerfed the meta thing, it made the thing I like not feel as bad because it's not that much worse anymore. So it essentially, for them, discouraged the playstyle they didn't want to play. Now, the more I thought about this over the last day, the more I felt like nerfing was actually the way to go. It is the smarter option. Yes, it might make some people mad, but it doesn't make the game easier over time. It doesn't need adjustment after a certain point. But there's one pretty big downside with it, and it's very clear when you look at Rivens. Because nerfing things, especially when it happens a lot, will eventually just make people not care about anything. Because why would they? Why would someone put time and effort into getting a thing and then upgrading that thing with Forma and potatoes and getting all the mods if it's just eventually gonna get nerfed? What's the point? A lot of people, including myself, were really excited about Rivens. They were crazy when they first came out. People were trying to get them for all kinds of different guns, and they were maxing them out and they were rolling them like crazy. And a lot of those people, including myself, just kind of gave up, because even if I do get a good Riven, how long is it gonna last? A month? Maybe 2? Maybe 3? I have like 10, maybe more actually, unveiled Rivens because I just don't care anymore. And it's different for everyone, of course. I feel like everyone has their own limit, and once they reach it, they just sort of give up on something. Some people can put up with a lot of it, some people not so much. So what do you do? What do you do in this situation? You have a game, you need to balance it, you can't just buff things because you will break it, and you can't just nerf things because people will hate you. So I think you just need to find the right balance of stuff to do. But anyway, I'm just rambling at this point. I've been thinking about this way too much. It's breaking my brain. So I thank you very much for watching and listening this time around. I would like if you could let me know in the comment section what you think about this whole situation that we're in. And I will see you some other time. Bye-bye.